Welcome to the Ang Geno Show, where we talk about ways for you to grow your life and your business.
Welcome, everybody. Ange here. We're looking forward to including you in some great topics today. Listen in as we dig in.
Yeah, so for all you listening for the first time, that's because this is our very first, it's our third attempt, I think. But this one's going to work. We got all the mics, all the technology worked out because we are not in the same city. We're in different sides of our state.
Yeah, I'm in SoCal.
And I am just outside of Sacramento.
Yeah, I'm down deep in Orange County here near the beach in Newport Beach.
I think a lot of people think that's fancier than where I'm at. But if you're into endurance athletics, this is where to live.
Right. I think that's true. You guys
It's
have a
it's
lot of.
called the endurance capital of the world, Auburn, California.
Is it really?
It
Well,
is.
there's some claim to fame. I think you might have just advanced that cause by sharing that here.
Yeah. Now I'm sure it's self-proclaimed, but who knows? We do have the Western States, that 100-mile run from Tahoe down. It ends right here, so I think that's why they.
Well, that's neat. Well, that's fun. I just know you have a lot more, it's green, you got fresh air and no fog.
We're above the fog line most of the time. It's awesome.
Nice.
Okay, so people don't care about that.
No.
Who the heck are we? That is something they probably care about. And what's interesting is Ange and I just spent a couple days up in Seattle, where we put on a team building workshop. And we're doing another one next week. But where was I going with this? Oh, here's where I was going. I learned a little bit about you up there that I hadn't known. Like, I don't really know your full background. Like your dad got you. Like, how did you really get into what you do? So first of all, you are a
I am.
psychologist. Is it a
Yeah.
type of psychologist?
Yeah. So there's this field called clinical psychology, which really focuses on working with individuals and groups. So there's social psychology, there's child psychology. I think my undergrad was super heavy into child psychology, and more than it focused on children, it was about how we learn. So that's really was my passion, is how we learn and how we take skill sets and apply them. So that was always a passion. I did a lot of assessment with children. When I was applying to grad school, they looked and they says, "Looks like you really enjoy working with kids." I was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you're right. Everything I've done was with kids." And then so I focused in a graduate program on clinical. And then as I started doing a lot of child psychology, I had a great internship at the Child Study Center at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. And it was a great place because I could work with the parents and the kids. It was a free clinic. So I really understood this whole thing about community. And then it dawned on me, my father was an organizational psychologist. He had migrated from clinical into organizational psychology. And what I loved about that, he kind of pulled me into it. I was a little hesitant at first, and I loved it because it was like being a psychologist in a small town. I was helping people in a community where everybody knew each other. And that was just a mind-blowing thing because in an organization, everyone's trying to accomplish something together. So it was about helping people, not just for themselves, but helping people to be better for a bigger group of people. And that to me was, I was sold. I was hooked. And I've been an psychologist ever since.
Okay. Now I never even knew that was a thing. Org psychologist. So tell me, what does that really mean? You work with organizations, how?
Yeah. So usually people identify a, a problem, a challenge. It's usually centered around how people are working together when they think about bringing someone like me in, organizational psychologist. It was originally called industrial psychology because it was this idea of, how do men work in factories and women and as well, and what how do humans get impacted by working in these industrial settings. But we become more organizationally focused and we understand that there's ways of working together that work better than others. And so I'll get called in. Clients will call me when they're struggling with opportunities around. It might be a team's not working very well. And sometimes, that's the reactive approach. Some companies call me and they're being very proactive. They might say, "Hey, we are going to be buying a new company. Can you help us integrate the
Mm,
two teams together?" Right? So it's very much, I could put two buckets. There's companies that are very proactive. Someone in there has been around the block and they're like, "Let's do this ahead of time so that we can anticipate and prepare people for change." Versus some people like, "Okay, let's change, new process, new leaders, new company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And then they're like, "Oh, wait, we didn't think about how the people were going to impact that."
yeah.
Right?
The fact you just said that, I'm like, oh my gosh. There's so many times I could have used you, or my clients could, because I have clients that have purchased other companies, and oh man, I'm seeing that. Wow. Okay. There's some
Right.
opportunities for you.
So yeah, right? So you think about how you can prepare people. It's like my dad as an industrial psychologist had all these great metaphors. He says, when people come together, it's like a docking procedure. He would say, a bad docking procedure is when the boat takes out 500 feet of pier before it stops. Like, "Ooh," you just come crashing in. And then he says, you can really help people, navigate that docking procedure. And if you prepare people and sometimes have someone on the dock communicating and making sure information flows, it helps a lot. So, yeah, that in a nutshell, that's how people will reach out to me. And the proactive is always nicer because you have time to plan. The
Oh yeah.
reactive is like, "Oh, we needed you yesterday." And it's about really helping them rise to the challenge. They're usually
Yeah.
pretty much hooked after that, and they become my reactive clients tend to become proactive after that because 'cause they're like, "Well, we don't wanna do that again." 'Cause it costs a lot more time and money. People think it costs too much at the beginning, but once you've realized what it costs, not just costs to get the psychologist in to help everybody and organize, but to kind of the profit loss, the effectiveness loss, the
Oh,
efficiency loss, you just can't get that back, and
absolutely.
sometimes you lose talent too. If you have a system and a
Yeah.
process that's messed up, it's gonna be your good people that leave too. They're like, I can get another job and I will." And so turnover is usually a place people go, "Ding, we need help."
Angela, in my world, as you know, I serve a home services businesses, so heating and air, plumbing, electrical, and there's a buying craze of these companies right now, and
Mm,
so a couple of mine have sold, and I've watched the damage as these
mm.
groups come in, and when they purchase them, it's like we're partnering. It's going to be they don't. They just
Yeah, they don't.
it's
When you get big corporations coming together,
yeah.
they're the best ones create integration packages that include organizational psychologists. And
Oh my
they're just
gosh.
part of a team. Smaller groups don't tend to do that, but it's not hard to layer a little bit of that, a little like a little an ounce of prevention, a little bit of a mindset prep. It's just like 1 hour on the proactive end for every 5 hours on the reactive end.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'm surprised we've never talked about this before because there's so many other ways that I could I could use you with my clients. And by the way,
Mhm.
we should probably explain how you and I even engaged with each other.
That's a fun story, and then I'd love to interview, quote, unquote, "turn the tables" and help people understand all the fantastic experiences you've had that have really made you the Profits Up guru. I mean, that is your business name and, the way your email reads. You really are a Profits Up guru. Watching you work with clients like we have been in our workshops together, um, it's really it's just really powerful to see how you know exactly what's on the dashboard of how to run an effective business, and then you just get people to understand that, have conversations around that, and you get people too. You're a people person, and so, that's a deadly combination to be able to do numbers and people. So you got it. But yeah,
Well,
so,
thank you.
yeah, let's talk a little bit. You're welcome. You're welcome. We spend a whole week, you guys out there in podcast land, helping this group identify when someone was paying them a compliment. And we were like, "Oh, hey, wait, I think that was a compliment. And what do you say?" And they're like, "Thank you." So this team got great at accepting compliments and Gino showing how much he learned. So I'm glad
Yeah,
you
it
enjoyed
was
that
fun.
compliment. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, how did we meet? You want to kick us off? You enjoy that one.
Yes. So in the world of cycling, um, our kids were on a team that is in the junior world, one of the top teams,
Mm.
probably the number 3 team. Some other teams might argue that, but there are 2 teams with much bigger budgets that pluck kids from all over the country. And
But not
then,
the heart and soul that our team had.
yeah, our kids team is based out of Northern California, and basically all the
Mm.
kids were from Northern California, except for this one kid that chased the uh, president of one of the sponsors, the guy that the bike sponsor for our team, chased him
Yeah.
down, and you should probably tell that part of it.
Well, it's a neat story. So, my son is a cyclist and he was at a race and he would always chat with this Team Swift group of guys at the beginning of races. And they were always at the NorCal races. And my son was riding his bike one day and he sees this guy on a Bianchi bike, which is the team bike, riding in the team kit, which is a cycling talk for, the team uniform. And he pulls a U. He says, I'm gonna find that guy. He's like, I want to be on that team. He was thinking about what team he wanted to go to next. And the guy was a fabulous guy named Jim Stevenson, who was the rep for Bianchi. It's currently a fabulous rep now with DeRosa bikes, by the way. But then he brokered in what an introduction to my son with Coach Laura Charameda, who is there's a podcast on Laura alone. So I won't even go into that, but what a
She's the
fantastic woman.
winningest American cyclist. Just
Yes,
summarize
exactly.
that way.
Yeah, let's whet their appetites because I think there's something there about her leadership, skill
Yeah.
set and, what she's done in her life and, with her sponsors and for her kids, as she calls them. So anyways, he brokered an introduction and, she interviewed him. He had a prepper resume and she quote unquote said, "Hey, I don't take kids from outside of NorCal, but, let's give it a try." And so, we put a couple thousand million miles on our truck going
You were
Northern
up at every
California.
event.
But it started, and, I'll let you take it away 'cause it opened our world to a really amazing group of people.
Yeah. And by the way, I got to brag about our kids. Our sons were, in the top 15 of the sport,
Yeah.
let's say. And my son's now retired. He's retired. He's
Retired from cycling, but man,
retired
he's
from
just
cycling. He's
launching in his own world.
yeah. He's graduating this year from college. So he did from high school and college in 6.5 years. He's cramming them all in. But anyway, her son is actually on the national team, the U.S. national team, and very
He
we're
stayed with it.
hoping he will be in the next Olympics. So
Yeah, we will
um,
see. We will see.
so it's exciting. So we got some pretty awesome kids that are highly driven, motivated, high success. And so what I do, we would be at these races and you get to know the other parents. And Ange and her husband Dave were a couple that I didn't really get to know that well. So invited them to dinner. I said, "Do you want to go to dinner?" And we did. And we are us and our spouses, we all
Yeah.
clicked. And then you and I figure out that we do kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
That was exciting.
Yeah, it was. I remember because we were driving to a race somewhere. I think we were going up to the velodrome here down in Carson, which is the center of our universe for track cycling. And we were in the back seat talking and talking. And I think we realized that for me, Gino, you and I have run across, I mean, we probably, a lot of consultants in our days in and out of work, but I felt from you that you cared about your clients. You weren't just sell in and move on and sell a big package and move on, that we cared about the kinds of solutions and ideas that we were putting into our client companies. We lived with them and that we kept them close, not necessarily had to be there every day, but that we're on a journey with them, helping them. Some clients for me are in and out, but that there's this longevity that we kind of understand their journey, and that helps them to have someone understand the journey. And so, yes, it was fun. And also that we were very independent, like we are an N of one, that you and I were solo
Yeah.
cowboys and cowgirls here.
Yeah. Which a lot of people don't understand, which makes, I think, the bond with
Mm,
anybody independent out there on their own. It's running their own business. There's just things that you will get that other people won't,
yeah.
in conversations. So that's always exciting
Yeah.
because, you know, my wife has no interest in what I do, really. She's excited
I
for
can
me, but
second that on my end, and it's fun because we're both extroverts, so it's like you
yeah.
beep ideas after ideas, and I think, um, our boys have stayed friends, which is wonderful. I know they just had a coffee together down in Laguna. I love that something like cycling can bring people together around something meaningful, and they stay together. But I remember there's this one conversation we were having because you and I were just kind of chatting on Zoom one day, and you said, Ange, I get my companies like all lined up and my clients are ready to fire off, and they are. And then I realized that it's the people that are going to hold them back. And I think even as you said that out loud and heard the words come back into your head, you were like, yeah, because you had said, it's funny, just as I said that, the very next week, you said a couple of your clients said, we need some people stuff. We need some people development. You were like, bing. It's like the way life just kind of puts things in front of you, right? So I think, was that about it? Is that for you? What would you add?
Yeah. Well, I remember. So for in my journey as again, I'm a
Yeah, tell
business
us. Tell
coach, is
us
what
your
I call
journey.
myself
Yeah.
now. But I started out as a consultant, and I did that. I entered the consulting field because I worked for a company that had made national recognition. We, my name was in, the trade magazines, and we're on stage collecting awards often. So that company had sold, and so I went out of my, well, I say on my own, but it was actually under the umbrella of this peer group. And so
Mm,
I was the on-site consultant for them. But as I entered that world, because I had worked with consultants, and what they were doing, they were digging themselves, creating a job for themselves in your
mhm,
company. And I thought, a good consultant should work themselves out of a job. And so that was my, MO. And so I did that. And I had a couple. I mean, there was one that was, I think they were 180 days overdue with creditors when I started working with them. And 18 months later, they were, current with everybody. And
mm,
in fact, ahead of the game at that point. And they've stayed there ever since. Um, but they didn't grow. And I
mm,
watched because I kind of kicked them out of the nest. Okay, you guys got it down. Go, so I could go help more companies was my mindset at the time. Well, I felt bad when they didn't really grow and they felt, and it's interesting. I work with them again now, but there was a big gap, maybe 6 years or something, where I didn't work with them. And I think that they may have felt a little odd, like, hey, we still need your help. Um,
mm,
I had another client that he kind of pointed out to me, said, look, I may not be moving the way you want me to move, the speed, meaning says,
mm,
but I'm making more money I've ever made.
mm,
And so I thought to myself, it isn't just showing them how to run the business, it's coaching them on the fact that
mm,
they can run a business and then
yeah,
coaching them how to get to the next level.
yeah,
And so that's where the joy is now because most of my clients are bigger now. And again, many of them I've worked with since they were little $1 million companies, and now they're 20 plus $1 million companies. I mean, even well, the one we were just at, it's way, way bigger
yeah,
than that. Um, it's the fun and the people development and all that.
mm,
But I am not what you are. I'm the guy that goes in there and says, uh, yeah, you can do it. Don't tell me you can't, you know, it's just that to me is just the simple answer. Um, There's
Sometimes
more
there's a
to
little
it.
bit more nuance, but I think sometimes that fires people up. I mean, I'm thinking about our listeners. They might be thinking, "So what am I gonna get out of this podcast?" And I think this podcast today is about, you know, number one, hearing the story of two people that are very independent and kind of have taken the chance to stake out on their own. There's a lot of consulting firms you and I can be a part of, and we're not. So, how are we juggling that? And I think there's some deep values that we have here that help that risk be minimized. But I think as I think about, small businesses, owners get in their way, and sometimes they get in their people's way because they don't know and they're scared. And what I think is so cool is that, you can take this experience where you're like at an like award-winning level and, major companies, and that how to translate that for the guy who's on his own solo journey, right? And you take the fear out of it. Like the numbers aren't magic. You just got to know what each number means, and you just got to understand it's like the levers of a business, right? And watching what you have done with these businesses gives me great hope. I think about some of the clients I'm helping that are small and privately owned businesses, because my joy right now is working with privately owned companies, right? Because they can really drive their own destiny and not worry about stock price and stuff like that. And it's a distractor, right? But
Yeah.
but I can think about how many owners I've worked with over the years that now that I know you, I want to make sure that you do a health check on them, right? Like I think there's a lot of support that they could get that is more than just how they're treating their people, more than how they're rolling out roles and responsibilities and goals, and all that stuff has to be there. But like the financial health of the business, a lot of these guys and gals, they don't kind of see how all those numbers click. And you do, right? They talk to you. And you're real inspiring about like driving those too. I mean, your guys really get fired up, like you call it out and they know. You're also really blunt and bold. And I think you and I probably are a little yin and yang on that too. I have
That's good or bad. Yeah.
but you know what? I think you and I both have this philosophy is like truth shall set you free, and feedback is a gift. And boy, if we're going to help people who want to grow their life and grow their business, we got to learn to look in the mirror, but we also got to learn to listen what people say to us while we're looking in the mirror. And sometimes you can discount the person giving you that feedback, but when it's a second person and a third person and you're making the same mistakes, it's important to listen. And I think that's where you come in. That's where we come in. We give different kinds of feedback, but equally valuable.
Yeah, in fact, maybe that's something that our listeners should understand too, is that the one of the biggest obstacles I help people overcome is belief.
Mm,
People will be doing, and I see people, this goes to businesses and people, they'll be performing at a standard that the business may accept. It may be the average performance for their industry. I, I don't want to be average.
mm,
And so I show people you don't have to be average. I know people doing double, even more than the average as far as those key performance indicators go. And in fact, I believe that whatever average is, I know at least double is possible.
yeah.
And when I first say it to some people, let's say you're in sales and you're closing, 3 out of 10 calls, and that's the norm. You might even be the top performer in your
Mm,
business. I'm going to tell you that sucks. There's people in your business doing 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, and they may not believe that, or if they do believe, well, yeah, but they're probably slimy, cheating. This, no, those are excuses. The second you start saying things like that, you're creating an obstacle for yourself, an
yeah.
excuse, and you're
Yep.
never going to overcome that. And I just want to beat that out of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's exactly the place. You talk about the belief, and I think that is so important. And I think there's so many like things behind that door of belief. I think people let a lot of negativity creep in. And I'll give you one tip I give my clients. When we wake up in the morning, and we linger and we let our thoughts start to creep in and we're like, "Ah, I got a big heavy day. Oh, I think sometimes a negative mindset can creep in as we lay there in bed, like, oh, facing the day. I always tell people, get out of bed quickly and start your day. Get out, just start doing, because a lot of those negative thoughts can creep in as we lay there and we kind of like can scare ourselves out of being bold, doing what we thought we could do. And I always say, you got to look up, not down. So I always encourage people, get out of bed quickly and just start your day, because the human being does so much better moving than sitting still, thinking. We get so trapped. So yeah, I'm behind you trying to unlock that belief system, get them to look up, not down, always up.
Yeah. So this is why we're podcasting too, is one, we just enjoy the heck out of talking about what we do. And it seems to be fun. We've had some great conversations that I'm sure many people would have loved to have, been
Mm,
a fly on the wall on those. Um, but I think both of us, I think financially we're both, I'll speak for myself. I'm happy with the
yeah,
income I make in my life. I feel you are
yeah.
probably in that same boat. That isn't what's driving us.
Mm-mm.
It's we both want to have an impact. We're both around the same age. I know she's probably 30. She never told me how old she is. I can only guess.
Keep guessing.
um, but at this point, again, I'm 55. I'm not afraid to admit that. In fact, I like saying it because everyone thinks I'm younger.
You see,
It's
you
the
have so much, you
makeup.
have the energy of the 30-year-old, right? I think that's what drives both of us, right? Is we just go, go, go.
No.
But we
So
are in a decade of our life where you want to give back, don't you?
yeah, it again at this point, look, our kids are kicking butt in their lives. Both mine are I couldn't
Yeah.
be happier. Your kid, the national cycling team. I mean, this is so many of our friends don't have those situations. Not that they're bad kids, but they just go the normal route, him ha. Um, anyway, so we don't have to coach our kids. Not that we're going to stop, but the giving back now. I mean, being a parent, by the way, for me was a huge thing. I decided early in life I didn't have the ideal parents. I had loving parents, but they weren't
Mm,
ideal. They weren't always there. As like they didn't know where I was all day. I could have been
mm.
getting in all kinds of trouble. I fortunately chose not to. I watched my friends make those mistakes and
Lucky,
spend all
lucky
their
they
money.
made them
And
before you did, right?
yeah, I don't know. There's we can get into that, maybe a whole nother thing. But um, I guess what I'm summarizing, what I found to be most rewarding is when you actually help someone,
Mm.
especially that breakthrough moment where someone's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And boy, it changes their direction. And, in my case, it's directly correlates to their business growth. The
Mhm.
the ones that they might fight me a little bit. And again, I'm very blunt, as you said. They keep me around, but
Oh,
I know
yeah.
they don't like hearing what I'm saying. Um, and then when they finally do it, and it's not that I'm some genius, I learned all this elsewhere. I don't want to say that I am the almighty of business knowledge. Uh, to me, it's just some simple things that other people have heard, but they just don't see the way around it. And anyway, when they have that magical moment and their business is now, multiple times bigger than it was, and they're living lives that many can only dream of.
Yeah.
One of mine now, he's like, okay, Gino, my next thing is I don't want to fly commercial anymore. He wants his own plane. We're not
That's a
far
big
from it.
goal. You've
We're not
helped,
far
and
from it.
you've supported that growth,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's huge. And there is something, I mean, there are endless studies, Gino, of the power of how good it feels to help others. They did this study on a college campus where they gave half a group of college kids $20 and they said, go spend this on yourself. It's for you. Do anything you want with it. But we just want you to fill out a survey at the end of the day. Want you to spend it in a day. And they went to another group, same size group. They gave them $20. They said, we'd like you to find different ways to share this money with other people. You can give it all to one person, give it in multiples of whatever, singles, fives, to more than one person. And we want you to, at the end of the day, tell us how you felt. There was a significantly different outcome, that the people that were able to give that money to others, and the joy it created and the reflection back of having created that joy, I mean, that's measurable. And I
Yeah.
think you and I live in that space. And I think it's really powerful when others get to a place where they're maybe emotionally or financially secure enough they can start thinking about others. I think that's maybe why you have to get to your 50s to be that way. I don't know, but my father always called the 50s were the harvest years and the giving years, where you have knowledge and wisdom, but you still have energy and you want to do. And, like us, our kids are on their way and we're like, okay, so who else can we help? Right? Like we're always there for our kids. That's there, but that intensity of parenting is gone when our kids are kind of like in their 20s and launching and figuring things out. Like nothing's perfect in life, but they're on their journey. So, anyways, I do want people to understand that to find a little place to give to others, no matter what decade you're in, it's a really, yeah, taking anything from someone in their 50s and applying it in the 20s is rocket fuel, right? I think you even have a saying with your kids. What did you tell your kids? You have a great quote about if they can take anything that you've told them now and
Oh,
apply it, then they'd
yeah.
be like 10 years ahead of the game of anyone else.
Yeah, I said if you can be the first two kids in the history of the world to accept that your parents might know what they're talking about, you're going to be 10 years ahead of everyone else your age.
Oh my God. I think there are a lot of parents out there going, yes, I need to tell that to my kid. When I heard that, everybody, I was like, where was Geno 15 years ago? That would have been so good to tell my kid. But anyways, yeah, I think this has been an awesome, awesome first podcast together today. We still don't know your full story. Before we close, would you like to tell us a little? I don't know. Let's keep it rolling. I'd love to hear how you came to be a coach. I mean, you've had some interesting jobs in your life and learned something from each one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I never would have dreamt that this is what I'd be doing for a living. Um, yeah, I've done a lot of different things, as you said, but that's a long story. That's a whole podcast
Maybe
in
we should hold on
itself.
to that. Maybe that's our next podcast, so everyone can stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Because I relish in stories like that, because a big part of what I do is understand how people get to where they are, right? Because there's so many recipes for success. People are always asking me, like, what's the way to success? I say the way to success is learning from everything you've done, regardless of what it is. So I think you've learned a lot from your journey. I can't wait to unpack that and maybe sort of ask some questions along the way so people can learn from your varied approach. I took the education approach, which it sounds like a nice straight line, but I think your approach is so much more likely going to cross paths with where other people are at in their life. And they're wondering, am I ever going to get there from here? And if they hear your story, they're going to be like, yeah, you can get anywhere from anywhere. I don't know, you just hook up on Waze and just keep driving in the wrong direction. She'll still get you to where you want to go. I think that's a lot of life.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting is I didn't know that this is where I want to go. I mean, I'll tell the end part of how I ended up here. I actually started consulting to pay the bills while I started an ad agency because I
Mm.
have this love of marketing. But after, and I forget how many years, and I had a partner in the ad agency. He bought me out. But there was a point where I realized, okay, having an ad agency is not nearly as fun as the
Mm.
consulting. I mean, there's the part you write a great campaign and so well, my wife thinks. I'm like, well, your wife doesn't know anything about marketing. It was very frustrating when you had something that you knew was good and they said no to it and they wanted to do
Mm.
something that just was way less impactful. And then they complain that, well, the advertising is not working. You're not using my ads.
Right?
But uh what really happened is during that time from the consulting, that's what I was calling myself at the time, after helping some companies, that it was rewarding in a way that I'd never expected. And that's what made me become more focused on
Mm,
this, and uh, changed it to a coach because it's, again, like
yeah.
you, I don't like working with big business. I don't want to deal with a committee.
Yeah, agreed.
Committee just
And a
kills.
board, yeah, they're hard. Some boards
Yeah.
are very attentive, but others are just kind of in it for the prestige and
Yeah.
what they want. Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
This was
We'll
great.
end there.
Sounds good. And we hope to see everybody back again. Join us and we'll take it away.
Yeah, I believe you'll be seeing us every Monday. We will be releasing something.
I'm
All
all
right, folks. Thanks. We'll catch you
take
next week.
care. Bye.